Well, I'm delighted to be joined by Janina Pescinski, who's one of our PhD students and also one of our Queen Mary music scholars. Very nice to see you, Janina.
It's great to be here with you, Paul.
Now, Janina, I think you're in France at the moment. Is that right?
That is correct. I've been in France for the better part of a year now in relation to my PhD research. So I'm doing a PhD in politics and in law, and I work broadly around concepts related to migration and citizenship and borders. So I've been doing my fieldwork here along the Franco-Italian border, working with activist groups who are helping migrants who have crossed this border.
A very important and very topical issue, isn't it, at the moment?
Yes.
Absolutely. And I won't get into the details of that, obviously not appropriate for this discussion, but music is important in your life. How important?
It's been a huge part of my life for as long as I can remember. And it's particularly important, I think, in this time when we are all socially distanced and spread across the different corners of the world, that it's still a really powerful way of coming together. And it means so much, especially now.
And in terms of this year, obviously, and the issues that you've just raised, what does music give to you personally? And how have you been involving yourself in it?
Well, one way that I've been able to sort of keep up with music is I'm lucky that I am a singer, so I have my instrument with me wherever I go, and I'm able to practice and to sort of do even solo performances for myself. That it brings a lot of joy just to be able to make music. But I've also managed to stay connected to the choir that I sing with and to attend virtual rehearsals, which after some initial technological hiccups have become routine practice for a lot of ensembles now. And while it's not the same as being in a room with everyone, it's better than nothing, and it's still a way to feel connected and to feel like you're working towards something together.
Does music play an important part? Do you bring music into your work on migration and working with refugees and that?
So one of the places where I've been doing research is a refuge where people who have just crossed the border stay the time that they need to sort of recover and plan the next steps of their journey. And because you have people on the one hand who are from either France or Italy, who are sort of the locals who are helping to run the shelter, they bring one musical culture with them, but you also have people who have come from different parts of the world, from West Africa or from Iran and Afghanistan, and they bring music with them too. And so it's a space that is always resonating. People are playing songs off their telephones, they're sharing, there's always music going on, and there are people who are making their own music, doing raps. So it's a space that's very much alive with the music that people bring with them. And it's a way for them to connect to each other, but also to stay connected to the places that they've come from.
It is an extraordinary international language, and it doesn't matter what language or what genre. People have a sort of natural, innate respect for other forms of music, based on, I think, the skill, isn't it, that's involved with it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's just something very profound about music that touches everyone, even in different ways, but it's something that we can recognize in people no matter what part of the world they're from.
Now, you're a very fine singer. When did singing start in your life?
I started singing when I was young. I think the first time I sang was sort of in church choirs because that was the space that was available to me. And then I grew up in the United States, and so I was able to sing in sort of the regional New Jersey choir when I was in middle school, and did some performing in musical comedies, and sort of grew up with that aspect of being a singer. But at the same time, I also played different instruments growing up, and I think that really helped in my musical education as well, because it gave me a lot more of the sort of music theory and technical basis for music. And I turned to singing more seriously later on when I was at university.
Which instruments have you studied, and do you keep going?
Well, principally the violin that I started playing when I was around 10, and have continued on and off with that. And then I had a brief stint playing the French horn and playing the mellophone in my high school marching band. And those were things that sort of fell by the wayside.
Do you, as a singer, often relate, because obviously playing an instrument and playing a violin gives you incredible help in terms of singing. Do you even imagine yourself doing your fingerings as you're finding the notes with your voice?
I have done, and my first voice teacher when I was at Rutgers University, I worked with a fantastic member of the faculty, Fred Urry, and it was something that he would have me do is he'd say, you know, physically do the action of playing while you're singing. It will help you think through your voice differently and think about finding a note as if you're playing a note, because sometimes, I mean, of course, there's incredible technical skill required to play the violin well, but you know, basically, if you put your finger here, it will make that note. And it is not always the case with your voice. Sometimes it's much more difficult to situate, okay, if I do this, what sound will come out?
Yes.
And so bringing the two together helps you to think through it differently and even to feel it physically differently.
Absolutely. Now, music is been part of your life. How are you going to take music forward with your work?
Well, it's something that I hope I'll be able to continue doing no matter where I go in the world and no matter what I pursue as my sort of primary career after finishing the PhD. But being able to perform music and be part of musical ensembles really gives a great sense of belonging to whatever community you're a part of. And so that's something that whether it's on a very amateur level or on a more semi-professional level, depending what I have access to, it's something that I hope I'll continue to be involved in.
And has there been any particular musical event that's left a memorable impression on you?
So when I got to London, I joined the London Symphony Chorus, and that has been an incredible musical experience because it's the first time I have been involved in an ensemble of that level of professionalism. I mean, we perform with the London Symphony Orchestra and Sir Simon Rattle, and that really just, you have to step up your game if you are part of an ensemble like that. You have to practice and perform as a professional. And I was incredibly lucky to get to go on tour with the chorus and symphony orchestra in February of last year for the Beethoven 250th anniversary celebrations. And so we were performing a little known Beethoven piece called Christ on the Mount of Olives. Oh, yes. And also, of course, the incredible Ninth Symphony. And we went on tour to Paris and to Germany and Luxembourg. And so it was very special getting to be a part of this birthday year, but it was also really meaningful as a UK orchestra and ensemble comprised of members from all over the world, musicians who are from the UK, Europe, and further afield, performing the Ninth Symphony, which is, of course, also the European anthem in these great European capitals in the year of Brexit, also showed that a musical piece that's over 200 years old still has great political significance now. And that was, you know, especially because of the work that I do around mobility and politics, was sort of an interesting convergence of those two worlds for me.
It's often forgotten, but in fact, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony was commissioned by the British Royal Philharmonic Society. So Great Britain commissioned what became the European national anthem. Little irony perhaps in that, isn't there?
Indeed.
Anyway, we mustn't get onto that because that would be inappropriate. But music, you've chosen three very unusual pieces, which I don't know at all.
And that's a great surprise because I think you know everything. So
well, I was hoping that I was going to recognize at least one of them. So your first piece, tell us about the Bobby McFerrin piece.
So I've chosen, this is a talk/performance by Bobby McFerrin, who's a great American jazz vocalist. And he gave a talk at I think it's the World Science Festival. And he talks about the pentatonic scale, but he doesn't talk about the pentatonic scale. He performs the pentatonic scale, and he gets the audience to perform the pentatonic scale with him without explaining anything. And then he does this sort of little improvised performance with them. And it's really incredible you just watch this room of people and everyone understands what's happening, whether they're musicians or not. And he explains that no matter where he goes in the world, this works. And I think that speaks to something really deep about how music is embedded in humanity. And it's just a joy to watch this performance.
Absolutely. Well, I certainly am. And then you've chosen another very unusual piece for voices.
Yes, this is a young American composer named Caroline Shaw, who has written a partita for 8 voices. And it is impossible to explain what this piece is. It comprises many different musical genres. It takes you on this roller coaster of a journey And it again, it just is such a joyous piece to listen to. And it's also such an exploration of what the voice is capable of and how the voice can express things. And she incorporates elements of different musical traditions, some that are more familiar in the Western canon and some that are not. And one thing that's happened around this piece is that she incorporates some Inuit throat singing. And that actually opened up a sort of mini debate in the musical community about cultural appropriation and when is it borrowing and when is it appropriate. And I think that that's also a really important debate to have. You know, we see it happening in universities and happening in academic spaces, but I think it's necessary to also have these discussions in the musical space and think about what does it mean to incorporate musical elements from different cultures and how can we do that in a way that is respectful to everyone. But the piece itself is just incredible and well worth listening to. It might sound very strange at the beginning, but stick with it because it's a lot of fun.
I'm certainly looking forward to it enormously. And then finally, Howard Goodall. Tell us about this work.
Yes, so Howard Goodall is a great contemporary English composer. And when it became clear to the London Symphony Chorus that we would not be performing together in person for quite some time, but also that the coronavirus pandemic was really changing the world that we live in, and not only the musical community, but also having profound effects on healthcare and unfortunately people losing their lives to that, the LSE commissioned Howard Goodall to write a piece for the pandemic. And he wrote a beautiful piece called Never to Forget that recognizes the first 122 healthcare workers in the UK who died of coronavirus. And it's a very simple, beautiful piece that we recorded during the first lockdown. So it's one of these, everyone is listening to a click track and recording in their headphones. But it was our small way of trying to recognize what was happening in the world and thinking about how can we use music to both recognize the losses that have happened and maybe heal a little bit.
Absolutely. It's going to be a very interesting thing how we manage to bring music back together again, particularly this year.
That's the next challenge.
That is, absolutely. I just wanted to ask you one thing, because the recording that came out of the Beethoven work, I presume you're on that then, singing?
That's right. You'll find my name in the credits.
Wonderful. And that's on the LSO's own label, isn't it?
It is, LSO Live.
LSO Live, Christ on the Mount of Olives. Well, it's a recording I'd actually considered getting. It's obviously a Beethoven work that's less familiar, and I think I'm going to go and buy it now. You can buy it on Amazon, can't you? And
you can, and I think it's well worth it. There aren't many recordings of this out there, but we had a fantastic team of soloists, and the orchestra and the way that that Simon Rattle conducts the piece just brings it to life in an incredible way, and it was a lot of fun to be a part of that. So it's worth a listen.
Absolutely. So that in a way gives us 4 pieces that we should be listening to, doesn't it? Yes. And we can remember the Beethoven's 250th anniversary last year that sadly went awry because of all the reasons that we know.
Yeah.
Janina, it has been, as ever, a pleasure talking with you and learning so much about your passion for music and also your passion for the good of humanity and the way in which you see music as being so integral to that. I think Beethoven and every composer who has all the right values would hold those opinions absolutely at the top. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much to you, Paul, and thank you for keeping our musical community at Queen Mary alive.
It's a pleasure.